Hello, Gareth here. And recently I went on a painting trip to a place called Hiji. It's a small Japanese town next to the sea. And I did basically 5 subjects, and I'm going to show you the photos and then the paintings I did. So this is the first photo I used, and I call it Beach Explorers. And this is the painting I did. So I basically did just one painting. So what I'm happy about with this painting is the change in the sea from this green colour to a purple colour. I'm very happy about that. I think you can see that very slightly in the photograph, but I exaggerated it a lot. And then I'm very happy with the rocks I did. Maybe I did a bit too many. You should always try and be a bit minimalist with watercolor, but there you go. And I just kind of made my own figures really. But I really love this figure in blue because your eye goes straight to that blue, and it's a beautiful blue color. It's obviously overdone, but I like that too. One of my big things at the moment is to just be a bit more wild in my watercolor painting. We'll see how that goes. Now it says this is attempt number 1, but that's all I did, and basically I'm happy with this painting. So then this is the second photo from which I did a painting, and I just love this scene. And notice how that horizon line is slanting down. Now I don't know why that is, but I loved that. And also I love this big cluster of rocks on the left here. It was just very interesting, and this figure was also very interesting. And so I did quite a few attempts at this painting. Basically I called this a man walking on the beach. So here we go, this is the first one. And I didn't do any mountains in the distance on this one, but I did have this lovely arc of white light going all the way around. And I was quite happy with the rocks on the left hand side. The figure is a little bit strange, I think, but there we go. So here's my second attempt. So I'm quite happy with this. I quite like the sparkling light on the sea. I think that's very nice. I think the rocks are nice, and the dry brush with the sea is not too bad. The figure, sadly, is too much to the edge of the painting, I think, and he needed to be a bit more towards the left, but it's still good. I'm still quite happy with it. And then here's the next one, and I quite like this one. I love the beach. I think the beach is a lovely delicacy. You've got that light, almost lilac, kind of purple, whatever colour, and it just sinks down into a golden yellow. So I'm really happy with that. And again, we've got this brilliant arc, or this white light that begins at the horizon and comes all the way around towards this figure. So I'm quite happy with that. I think the figure could be improved a bit. He looks a bit too stiff. But and maybe this sea could be improved. Maybe it's not quite the right colour, but I still think it's a very good attempt. And then this, I think, is my final one. And I'm really happy with this. I think the figure is very good in this. It looks more natural. So I'm very happy with this painting. Now this was the third photograph which I used, and this is a painting of a girl on the beach, and I just loved this, and I loved the reflection. So this is my first attempt, which I was quite happy with, but I should have done a few highlights on the figure. Maybe was a bit lazy here, I don't know. And I think what works very well in this particular painting is the blue in the surface of the beach, which is not there in the original photograph at all, but I still like that. And I like the darkness, like the figure's head and dress, but also the darkness in the sea and the land. And the rocks, they kind of unite, and they're all roughly on the same level. So little things like that are very, very important, those kind of unifying things in making a good painting. And then this was my second attempt. I'm a bit embarrassed to show you this because the figure is like something made of wood. So it almost works, but doesn't quite. But the beach is amazing. It's beautiful, and it's more like the photograph a little in that golden yellow colour. And the rocks are wonderful, and the dry brush I did with titanium white, that's amazing. So there are aspects that I like about this, but sadly I screwed it up with the figure. And then this is my next attempt. Again, everything is pretty good. The beach isn't as good as before, but the figure is too wooden again. And this shadow I tried to add, so we've got a reflection, but I tried to add a shadow, and that is just horrendous, that shadow. But I thought you might find it interesting, so I'm showing it. And then my final one, so I think this is pretty good. The beach is lovely. It's a lot milder though than the other ones, and maybe it does need something a bit darker in it, but I still think it's beautiful, and I think that's fairly successful. Yeah, I think that's quite a nice painting actually. Quite happy with that one. So then we move on to the next photograph that led to painting 4, and this is a photograph from my drone, and this is looking down on the beach, and we can see some mountains in the distance. And this is the first one I did, and it's not bad. I like the beach, I like the sparkling sea. On the right hand side, the buildings, the greenery, I almost like that, just doesn't quite work. And that distant mountain, and then that other outcrop of rock in the middle, doesn't quite work tonally, but I still like it. And then my second attempt I think is much better. Now the tones with the distant mountain and the in the middle or closer outcrop of rock, that tonally works much better. I'm not sure about the sparkle of the sea, but I love the beach, I love the wall and the steps. They're very interesting and very abstract like, and I'm much happier with the greenery here, though probably went over the top, but I like that. Like I said, one of the things I really want to do now is just to go a bit more over the top. So I'm doing that. And then final painting comes from 2 photographs. So basically I took the scene on the left. I quite like that Japanese building, and I even like those utility poles and power lines and that curving road. And then on the right hand side where we've got this entrance to a shrine, I decided, and I liked the light coming through the trees, but I decided to use cherry blossom trees or cherry trees with blossom on them, which is what we've got on the right hand side. So I combined those two, and this is what I did, and I'm quite happy with that. As you can see, there's a real interesting combination of colours here, of like a pink and a blue and a yellowy colour, and I think it's very exciting. And it's got some dark greys in it or blacks in it that kind of give it a grounding, so it's not all, you know, hairy-fairy. So, oh, and my signature looks quite nice on that one. I tried to keep it small and abstract looking. Now this one I'm really delighted with. I think the trees in particular look absolutely beautiful. and the shadows. I'm really delighted with that, and the blueness of the buildings in the distance. And even this building on the left, you can see a lovely blend of colours there, the purples and the browns. And that's where watercolour really excels. So this painting delights me. And as I look at it now, even the cherry blossom tree on the right hand side has little bits of pink in it, which happened by accident, I think, but it looks marvellous. And maybe I failed to do that in my other paintings. That just happened by accident, but it really works well. And the shadows are nice, and the tire marks. Yeah, I'm very happy with this one. And then I did this one. And although I think this is good, I think it's very interesting, especially that pink in that grey tree. I mean, doesn't look quite normal, but I think it's very fun. And the grass below is really wild. The car looks a bit too stiffish and not quite right. And the sky is a bit empty looking, but I still think it's a very interesting painting though. There's something very interesting about it, so quite happy with it. Then another attempt, and this time I did clouds in the sky. And I think this is a bit too busy, but I still like it. And the road is wild. I really went crazy with the shadows across the road from the trees with this one. But that's what it's all about. It's playing with it. Oh, and I changed where the light's coming through the trees, so it's now coming through the other tree. I'm trying to change the angle a bit. And then this was just practice at painting the tree and that distant background. So just practicing my psychedelic trees. And then here I decided to add the entrance, the torii or whatever you call it, this concrete doorway on the right, well, whatever you call it, that you walk through to the shrine. And I thought that was actually quite interesting. And I love that touch of yellow on top of the grass. I'm not sure if I added a little bit of titanium white to yellow with that. I think it was very, very good. And another thing, I'm not sure if I did it here, but one of the things I was doing at first was just wiping out the paint to get these rays of light. But later I found it was much better to let it all dry out and then re-wet it with water and then wipe it out with my brush and possibly a tiny bit of tissue. And I love this combination in the middle of the light blue building and the yellow on top of the grass, just under the tree. I think that's very nice. And then here's another one. Oh, I think I've actually shown you this one. There we go. Well, I'm only human and I make mistakes. And then the final one. So here on the left I've got a cyclist, and I've done some clouds with this one, but they're much more subtle with no rim lighting. And I think it's quite nice, but I think that second one was the best. But I still like this and think it's pretty good. And I think that's it. We've come to the end of it. And so what I'm going to show you now is just like a time-lapse video of me painting one of these final paintings, well, this final scene, and just talking a little about my trip to Hiji. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a time-lapse video in which I paint one of the scenes from my trip to Hiji. And while you're watching that, I'm just going to talk about my trip there. So in March of this year, 2021, I went on a family trip to Hiji to look at the cherry blossoms. It took a long time to drive there though because of traffic. It was worth the hassle though. Hiji is a small quiet town by the sea with many attractive traditional Japanese buildings. After parking the car, we walked down to the sea. Next to the sea are the walls of Hiji Castle, and by these walls are the cherry trees. It was here that we ate some delicious food from our lunch boxes and enjoyed the gloriously sunny weather and a lovely view of the sea. Although not in full bloom, the cherry blossoms look beautiful, and I did think of doing a painting of the cherry blossoms here, but in the end changed my mind. What really captivated my attention was the beach and the sea. So, after lunch, I and my daughter explored the beach. It was a very rocky beach with a sea wall that was fortified with a big stack of triangular-shaped concrete tetrapods. At first, my daughter was reluctant to step onto this overly rocky beach, and some of the rocks were so big that you had to climb over them. I suppose it was rather a rugged and somewhat unfriendly beach. You certainly had to watch your step. I wanted my daughter to come though, so I gently coaxed her in order to get her to come. Once she did, her reluctance soon disappeared as she became interested in the rock pools and all the different stones and shells we could see. And further on, the beach became sandy, which my daughter liked a lot. She collected many stones and shells in her cap. We also saw a few sea roaches. They are rather unpleasant to look at, but harmless bugs. I have never seen them in England, but in Japan, when it gets hot, you can see many of them by the coast. I took several photos of this beach, and that led to the following painting. I'm quite happy with this painting, especially the figures, although perhaps they need to be more connected to one another, and there needs to be a bit more interaction. Then we joined up with my wife and walked along the coastal path. It eventually led us to another beach. I liked the view of this beach and the man walking across it, and this later became a painting, well, several paintings. But here is my favourite one. And it was here that I took a photo of my daughter on the beach. I really liked the image and did a painting of it. Well, several, but I'm still not happy with my results. But this one here is my favourite one. And it was here that I got out my drone and took some aerial photos of the beach and the coastline. I'm not sure if these photos were so good, but I did 2 paintings from one of these photos. I'm quite happy with the second one, which you can see here, but I still think it needs improvement. Maybe one day, maybe never, who knows. Then we went to a visitor's centre. It was in the style of a traditional Japanese building. Here I saw some strange flat fish in a fish tank that are found in the sea around Hiji. I also drank some mango juice, which was very refreshing, and I learned a little about the history of Hiji. I discovered that there used to be a castle in Hiji, but it was knocked down in the Meiji period and only the walls were left. I also discovered that there are some scenic walks around Hiji, and I am eager to go on them, as I love to walk. And then it was time to go home. It was an epic trip home though, for the sun was low in the sky, and I saw some beautiful hazy evening scenes. I took many photos and had to delete most of them later, but eventually I combined 2 photos that I really liked and created a single painting from them. I was very interested in the vision of sunlight shining through a cherry blossom tree at evening time. I'm not sure though if I went too far with the colours and have produced some psychedelic vision. That said, I feel the urge nowadays to experiment more and to try to paint more on the wild side, if possible, in my paintings. I don't always succeed, but I try to go along with this urge. And this is my favourite painting from the lot of them. I ended up painting about 4 or 5 paintings of this one particular scene. Maybe it was over the top, but I was really caught up with the beautiful chalky lilac colour of cherry blossoms in the evening time, and the idea of light shining through them and imbuing them with a crimson hue. Maybe that sounds romantic, maybe it sounds silly, I don't know, but I really like that idea, and so I tried very hard to capture it. And I think nowadays just trying is enough for me, and experimenting. Sometimes the idea of having to make a brilliant painting is overwhelming for me and just stifles my creativity. So nowadays I just try to experiment, and that's enough. And that's also the end of my trip to Hiji. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.